Have you ever stopped to think about what happens in an artist's mind when reality stops making sense? When the world we know falls apart and there is only a thin line left between lucidity and the abyss? In October 1888, Vincent van Gogh did something that shocked the city of Arles and would go down in history as one of the most disturbing episodes in modern art. He used a blade to cut off his own left ear, wrapped it in newspaper, and presented it to a woman in a local brothel, a gesture as incomprehensible at the time as it is today. But what no one could imagine is that, a few months later, inside an asylum for the mentally ill, this same man would create an image so powerful that centuries ago later, scientists would use artificial intelligence and mathematical models to uncover its deepest secrets, and their discovery was breathtaking. The brushstrokes that form the sky on the canvas follow with precision the mathematical laws of turbulence, the same ones that govern whirlpools in water, air currents, and even the movement of galaxies in outer space. How someone with a shattered mind managed to paint with such accuracy a force of nature that would only be understood by physics many years later. Like a man locked in a room in hospital, he was able to see patterns that would take scientists a century to decipher. This is the story of the painting that led Van Gogh to collapse, but also immortalized him forever. We are talking, of course, about the Starry Night, Vincent van Gogh's most famous painting and perhaps the most reproduced and revered in the Western world. But what many people don't know is that when he painted that painting in June 1889, he was not in a moment of complete lucidity. He was not inspired for a romantic night or for a poetic vision of the sky. In fact, he was forcibly admitted to the psychiatric hospital of Saint-Paul-de-Musol in a village called Saint-Remy-de-Provence in the south of France, an arid and isolated place where the sick were left to die by the society that did not know what to do with them. He did not want to be there. After the year episode, the residents of Arles signed a petition asking for his expulsion from the city. 30 neighbors put the name on the paper demanding that crazy Dutchman leave, and he voluntarily surrendered himself to the hospital, thinking he would stay a few weeks to recover. But he ended up spending more than a year locked up in that place. And it is from this context, confinement, absolute solitude, silence, and despair, that the painting that today is worth hundreds of millions of dollars and attracts endless queues at the Museum of Modern Art in New York was born. But there is a detail that few people know about, and that completely changes the way we see this work. A detail that art history books, many people, often ignore. What Van Gogh painted there was not exactly what he saw from his bedroom window, contrary to what many art books have repeated for decades. That night landscape is not a faithful representation of the view he had from the asylum. The village with the church, with the pointed tower, did not exist in that way. The mountains in the background were in a completely different direction, and the imposing cypress tree that dominates the foreground of the painting was, in reality, much further away from the position where he painted. Van Gogh rearranged all these elements on purpose. He was not interested in copying nature like a photograph. He wanted to recreate nature from what he felt, from the raw emotion that pulsed within him. And this is evident in the technique he used, called imp, which consisted of applying paint so thick directly from the tube that the brushstrokes create relief, texture, and almost sculptured on the surface of the canvas. You could run your finger over an original Van Gogh and feel the mountains, feel the waves of the sky, feel the wind materialized in paint, while the Impressionists wanted to capture the visual impression of the moment, the light that passes, the scene that changes with the sun. Van Gogh wanted something completely different. He wanted you to feel the wind on your skin, hear the deafening silence of the night, see the movement of the universe in each brushstroke. And that's exactly why, when we look at the Starry Night, the first thing that hits us is not the recognizable shapes, but the raw energy that seems to vibrate before our eyes, like if the canvas were alive, as if the stars really pulsed and the sky really moved in infinite spirals. Let's dissect these calmly, because that's where the magic lies, and that's where we understand why this painting has spanned a century and continues to disturb and enchant us at the same time. The sky occupies 3/4 of the painting, a deliberate choice to put us in our right place, small in the face of the immensity of the cosmos. The stars are not distant and cold points like the we see from cities polluted with light. They are furious suns with golden and white halos that pulsate as if they were alive, as if they had their own heart and breath. The moon in the right corner is not the serene and silver moon of ordinary nights. It seems like an open eye that observes everything from above, an ancient eye that has seen empires rise and fall and remains there, impassive, and those spirals in the center of the sky, those same shapes that physicists would study with powerful computers 100 years later, connect each star in a cosmic embrace that encompasses the entire composition, in a movement that begins in the left corner, goes up, meets the moon, descends, goes around the stars, and returns to the cypress tree, creating a continuous flow of energy that runs through the entire screen. Below, the city sleeps. Unlit windows, quiet rooftops, a peaceful and indifferent human existence that contrasts violently with the erupting sky. The people down there don't know, don't see, don't understand that the universe is in movement above their heads, and between these two worlds, the earthly world and the celestial world, the cypress, this tree traditionally associated with cemeteries, death, passage, mourning, rises like a dark flame on the left side, connecting the earth to the sky, the finite to the infinite, life to what comes after. And it is no coincidence that the cypress is the only vertical thing in the painting. Everything else is a circular, spiral, horizontal movement, but the cypress is straight, firm, like a sentinel that bridges the gap between the two worlds, as if to say that death is not the end, but only the passage to that turbulent and wonderful sky that Van Gogh painted. And I ask you now, looking at all this with all these elements in mind, do you still think that Van Gogh was simply painting a night landscape to pass the time in the hospital? Do you still think that that was an exercise in observing nature? What he did in that asylum room was much deeper and much braver. He was painting his own psyche. He was externalizing it on the canvas, the whirlwind of feelings that consumed him inside. And the proof of this is in the letters. In the hundreds of letters he exchanged with his brother Theo, who was practically the only person in the world who still believed in him. There is a letter written by Van Gogh that completely changes the reading of this work. A letter where he talks about stars and death in a way that few artists dared to talk about. Van Gogh once wrote that looking at the stars always made him dream, and he wondered why the bright points in the sky should be less accessible for us than the black dots on the map of France. Just as we take the train to go to Tarascon or Rouen, said, we take death to go to a star. Read that sentence again calmly. Internalize what it means. Let it echo in your head for a moment. Now go back and look at the Starry Night with that thought in your head, with that key of interpretation in your hands, and see how everything fits together. See how the cypress tree makes sense. See how the pulsating stars do sense. See how the small sleeping town makes sense. What Van Gogh painted at that moment was not an existential crisis. It was not a delirium of a disturbed man. It was a declaration of faith, an absolute certainty that there was something greater waiting for him on the other side. The turbulence in the sky was not emotional out of control. It was the movement of life that continued to pulsate even when everything seemed lost, even when society had locked him up like a dangerous madman, even when his friends abandoned him, even when the painting he didn't sell, even when loneliness threatened to swallow him completely. And here we come to the cruelest and most beautiful irony of this story. Van Gogh died in July 1890, at the age of 37, shot in the chest in a wheat field in Auvers-sur-Oise. There were debates to this day whether it was suicide or an accident, but the fact is that he died 2 days later with his brother Theo by his side, and he died thinking until his last breath that he had failed as an artist. He sold a single painting in his entire life, The Red Vine, for a paltry 400 francs. He was called crazy, disturbing, a failure, incompetent. He was expelled from cities. He was forcibly interned. He was ridiculed by critics. But today, when we enter the Museum of Modern Art in New York and come across the Starry Night for the first time, we don't see a sick man. We don't see a failure. We see someone who saw beauty where no one else saw it. Someone that transformed suffering into art, loneliness into connection, and madness into genius. The painting that should have been just another delusion of a psychiatric hospital inmate became the most reproduced image on the planet, appearing on t-shirts, mugs, posters, notebooks, tattoos, album covers, films, series, and all of this because Van Gogh had the courage to paint not what the eyes saw or but what the soul felt. And if you stop to think, this is what separates ordinary artists from geniuses. Geniuses are not concerned with reproducing reality. They are concerned with recreating reality from within. They are concerned with making us feel what they feel. And Van Gogh felt everything in excess. felt too much, loved too much, suffered too much, and all this intensity overflowed into thick brushstrokes, into vibrant colors, into turbulent skies, and the result is that, more than 100 years after his death, we are still here, discussing, analyzing, trying to decipher what was going on in that red and tired head. The painting that should have destroyed Van Gogh was the same one that immortalized him. The Starry Night he painted inside a hospital room became the Starry Night that the entire world recognizes as one of the greatest works of art of all time. And if you have come this far after this entire trip, after delving into Van Gogh's mind, after understanding the context, the technique, the symbolism, the story behind the story, tell me now in the comments what you see when you look at the starry sky. Not the sky in the painting, but the real sky. The sky of your city. The sky that you see when you leave home at night and look up. Is there a painting, some music, some book that moves you in that deep way, that seems to talk directly to your soul, that seems to understand your pain without you needing to explain anything? I really want to know your story. I want to read in the comments the works that marked you, because that's what art is. It's connection. It's realizing that we are not alone in this immense and scary universe. Give it a like if you liked this dive, because it helps the channel grow and bring art to more people. Share it with someone who needs to rediscover the beauty hidden in simple things, in gray days, in dark nights, and subscribe to the channel because there is still a lot of screen, a lot of history, and a lot of mystery waiting for us to unravel together. The night may be dark, but the stars always shine brighter afterwards that the storm passes. And Van Gogh knew this. He knew that even locked up, even alone, even sick, the sky was still there, generous, immense, full of stars, waiting for someone who had the courage to look at them and see. Not just points of light, but promises that all of this will one day make sense.